Hey guys. Okay. Now we're recording. Okay, so welcome to our next session of the class on Judaism, meditation, and self-mastery. I'm very glad you joined us. This is an in-depth understanding of the teachings of Rabbi Kaplan about this very topic. He has done fantastic, broad, and thorough and deep research into the lost art of meditation. Jews were once heavy meditators. It's a lost art for us, and we're going to try to capture it back. And by capturing it back, we're going to reclaim some of our spiritual heritage. Everybody's thinking, what is spiritual? What is spiritual? We have a tremendous amount of spirituality in our practice. And by understanding meditation, we'll see just how prevalent it was and how prevalent it could be. So I'm recording, so you know that you can keep you can not get recorded. What I'm going to do though is I'm not going to mute everybody. I'm going to allow for the opportunity for people to ask questions or make comments as we go, as long as they're on topic. I'm going to give that a try. You don't have to if you don't want to. You will have an opportunity at the end when we have a schmooze period to talk a little bit more personally or ask more in-depth questions or just make side comments. That will not be recorded. So as far as that goes, I'm going to make a presentation, entertain any questions or topics or comments that are on topic. Then I'll stop. We'll have a brief meditation so people get a taste of what we're talking about. And then at that point, the recording will be turned off and we'll have a little bit of a schmooze for people that are interested. I encourage everybody to join the Facebook group. There's resources put in there. You'll have access to a link where all these recordings are. It's on a playlist on YouTube. And every day I post some resource for us. I guess the last point to make, as you know, if you signed up for this class, you are now registered for every other class. I schedule them all through June, and then I'll schedule them through the summer, but it'll have the same link. So with that link, it's like the gold key. You are in like Flynn. You can come to everything. So I'm glad you guys signed up. Let me now begin. Oh, and by the way, we're dedicating this session to the memory of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, who unfortunately became nifter a couple of days ago. I think it was on Shabbat. I think it was yesterday. And after a relatively short bout with cancer, and he was young, he was 72. He and Rabbi Kaplan are two of the biggest influences on my thinking as a Jew. And these are two people whose resources I continually go to. So he will be missed. Okay, let us share screen. Okay. Well, that's the wrong one. That's the political one. So we're going to get rid of that. Hold on. Let's see what else we got here. Just bear with me a quick second. Let's see if we can get it this time. Okay, that's what we want. Very good. All right, sorry for the delay. Here we go. Okay, this is how we're going to start. In our last session, we learned that Rabbi Kaplan taught that if at all possible to say the first paragraph of the Amidah by heart, even if it is from transliterated Hebrew without understanding the words. Ideally, one would understand the words, but one should not wait until one does understand them to say the blessings. So if you recall, we're diving into the Amidah. Rabbi Kaplan has told us that the Anshe Knesset Hagdalah, the great assembly at the time of the Second Commonwealth, when the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem for the second time, they said they had put a lid on the teaching of formal meditation. They said, but Klal Yisrael, the nation of Israel, needs meditation to elevate themselves spiritually. So they actually designed the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, as a meditation. And that's how we should be treating it. That's how it was originally designed. And of course, we're going to learn a lot about that. So, and starting to learn what Rabbi Kaplan says about using the Amidah as a meditation, one of the striking points we said last week was that even if you don't understand the Hebrew, you should still say it in Hebrew, even if somebody just transliterates the words, the Hebrew words, just writes them out in English so that you can pronounce them. So this begs the question, are you spiritually uplifted simply by saying prayers in Hebrew without even understanding the words? I mean, to use an English parallel, if people just speak English without understanding the words, are they saying anything? They don't know what they're saying. So similarly, if you are just saying words in a prayer without understanding them, what does that do? Does that do anything for you? Does it do anything at all? Okay. Yes, interestingly enough. So first we'll look at Esha Torah. Esha Torah said, as we had reviewed 2 weeks ago, they said, it is said in an essay called Nefesh HaChaim, which we'll get into, that the text of the Shemona Esrei is so spiritually powerful that even when recited without intention, feeling, or understanding, its words have a great impact on the world. So we'll find out who wrote this and what this is, but there's a claim that's so important that the rabbis from Esha Torah quote it and saying, the text, the words of the Shemona Esrei are so powerful, they have an impact on the world, a great impact on the world, even if you say them and don't know what they mean. How could that be? So what is this source that Esha Torah is quoting? What is the Nefesh HaChaim? Okay, from Wikipedia. It is actually a study produced by Chaim of Volzin, known as Chaim ben Yitzchak of Volzin, or Chaim Yikovitz, Reb Chaim. You may have come across him. He authored a work that he called Nefesh HaChaim. And here's a little bit about that. Nefesh HaChaim, contrary to popular belief, does not deal solely with the complex understandings of the nature of God. He got very metaphysical in it, but that's not all he did. It deals with the secrets of prayer and the importance of Torah, the purpose of that being to implant the fear of God, Torah, and pure worship into the hearts of the upright who are seeking the ways of God. Okay, so he was a Kabbalist, he was a mystic, and therefore a meditator of sorts. And he wrote about the nature of prayer, the secrets of prayer, and he took it upon himself to have a very high understanding of prayer. So Esha Torah is quoting him as a source because they see that he had a very keen and deep understanding of what prayer is from a mystical point of view. Okay. And a little bit more about him. He was attracted by the fame of the Vilna Gaon and became one of his most prominent disciples. Vilna Gaon, Gaon means genius of Vilna, Lithuania. And this Reb Chaim became one of the Vilna Gaon's prize pupils. So again, that is adding to the stature of Reb Chaim. And in his work, Nefesh HaChaim, in which he says that prayer has a mystical basis. Okay. We'll learn a little bit more about that. Okay. What exactly does he say in the Nefesh HaChaim that tells us that prayer has this power? Okay. This is what he says. And there's a source called Sfaria, which has an in-depth translation of Nefesh HaChaim with a commentary. So we're going to go over a little bit of that. Okay. This is what Reb Chaim says in that piece, Nefesh HaChaim. First of all, and he's talking about, in this section of Nefesh HaChaim, he's talking about the Amidah. Okay. Those who are capable of understanding will understand that there's no one currently in the world who is capable of codifying such a wondrous and awesome rectification. Okay. He's basically saying that there's nobody that he knows in the world that could have done what the Anshe Knesset Hagdalah, what the people of the Great Assembly did in designing the Amidah. He says that the world as created is broken, and it is man's God-given purpose to heal the world, to repair what is broken via thought acts and speech acts and physical acts defined in the Torah. Okay. Everything we do has the potential to repair a broken world. Okay. And he says, in particular, words used for thought acts such as meditations, cognitions, intellectualizations, speech acts such as prayers, and so on. All these acts that we do, all these things we say, the meditations that we take on, the prayers that we say, have the ability to rectify the upper and lower worlds and the figuration of the components of the world. Okay. Furthermore, the Amidah is a vehicle that is a model of creation, it describes the components of the creation and how the worlds interconnect and interact. And each occasion of praying causes new rectifications in the configurations of the worlds and the powers and the drawing down of other mochin. Mochin are mental states of mind. So he's actually saying that the Amidah has the secrets to creation, that creation as a set of worlds interconnecting and interacting, that all is in the Amidah. He says, from the moment that it was codified until the coming of the Redeemer, the Messiah, the Mashiach, there never was and never will be another prayer that in its detail resembles others that came before and after in any way. This is high praise coming from a very spiritually gifted man who took it upon himself to dive deep and understand what is going on with this Amidah and what is the power presented in it. High praise indeed. Okay. Furthermore, now he's talking about the people that actually wrote the Amidah and put it together. And it would have been impossible if not via the supernal level of prophecy and his Holy Spirit, God's Holy Spirit, that manifested over them, the people that wrote the Amidah, in an enormous manifestation during the codification of the wording of the formula of the prayer and the blessings. He, blessed be his name, meaning God, placed in their mouths these numbered words, and hidden within them are all the rectifications. Again, when he says rectifications, he means the repairs of the world. So the world is in a state of disrepair, according to him. The people who wrote the Amidah had prophecy, and by virtue of this prophecy, they were able to use to build this prayer. And when we say the prayer, we continue the act of repairing the world. And in some mystical sense, that can be described as each word of the prayer potentially draws down light that illuminates or strengthens a specific path. Okay. Perhaps, and then this is the commentator, perhaps referring to the connections between the various spherotes. I don't know. But I'm presenting this to show you that the potency of the Amidah, and that in saying it, we contribute to, we make it work. It's designed to fix the world. And when we say it, we are participating in that process. So a major point here is that by saying the words, the Hebrew words, you're doing that. Even though you may not know the vocabulary and you may not be able to define the words have that power, because those people that put the words together in the form of tefillot, in the form of these prayers, invested the words with that power, because they themselves had that level of consciousness and understanding to do it. And in Reb Chaim's words, it's because the Spirit of God, however you define that, was on them. Okay, that's a big deal. Okay, so this is one way of indicating that saying those words, even in transliterated Hebrew, helps the world. At the same time, however, Reb Chaim says this. This is the commentary on this piece. Reb Chaim emphasizes that the mental action during prayer should be a visualization of each word via the appearance of its individual letters, accompanied by an intention, and to intend to increase thereby the power of holiness, so that it will bear fruit above to multiply their holiness and light. Okay. He's then saying that Reb Chaim is saying, all right, first of all, bottom line, say those words in Hebrew and they impact the world favorably. But on top of that, you should engage in the meditation where you're picturing, you're visualizing every word, every letter of every word when you say it. So you take it to the next step. So that's an encouragement to us to learn the meaning of the words, so that, and to the point where we can visualize the words, actually know what those words look like, and to furthermore take our meditative approach to saying this to another level by using visualization, which is itself a form of meditation. So we have a prayer designed as a meditation, to be said in a meditative way. Okay. Okay. Heavy stuff. So obviously this is not a class to unravel the wonders of the universe yet, but we'll take a few more pokes at it. From Chabad, we can learn a little bit more about what else we know about how words affect the universe. Saying words affects the universe. This is what Chabad says. Chabad says that in the book of Genesis, we read how God created the world. God said that let there be light, and there was light. This was not simply rhetoric. These words contain the godly energy that created light. The Torah describes 10 such phrases, 10 utterances through which the world was created. Everything that exists was created through the energy within those Hebrew words. So Chabad's understanding of the text that describes the creation of the world is that God was speaking Hebrew when he created the world, and it was this speaking act that was the creative process. So that's another way of understanding how speaking and speaking Hebrew words actually is active and does something to the world. God did that originally. He spoke Hebrew and created something. Okay, and there's a certain kind of energy involved. Okay. Furthermore, Chabad explains that unlike human speech, which I'm doing now, when godly speech is spoken, it is everlasting. What I say comes and goes. What God says is forever. So we are as close as possible saying God's words when we're saying the Amidah, at least to the point where the people that wrote the Amidah were enlightened to the point where they had some kind of level of prophecy. And that's how you can say that their words are God's words. So when we are saying those words, we are saying God's words. And if we're saying God's words, we are participating in the creative process, which Rabbi Chaim is defining a little bit more precisely as rectifying the world in some way, shape, or form. Okay. And Chabad wraps it up by saying, since everything is created through words, the Hebrew name of an object expresses the very energy that gives its existence. This is why it was Adam. This is why Adam was named. This is why Adam was the one who named the animals, for it took great wisdom to be able to grasp the character of each animal and give it its true name. So this is saying that Hebrew is a language. They said previously that the Hebrew letters and words have a certain energy. And here Chabad is elaborating a little bit further and saying, what is that energy? It's kind of like the essence of what the thing is. So, and the example they're using is when the Torah talks about Adam, all these animals came up to him. And he says, you're a this, you're a cow, you're a moose, you're a beaver, you're a crocodile, whatever it was. And the word rung true. The word represented what that animal was. He wouldn't have called the crocodile a hippopotamus because the hippopotamus has a different essence, so to speak. And Adam Harishon was smart enough to determine what the essence was in some way, I guess, and therefore he came up with the right word. Okay. Okay. Let's wrap this section up and talk about what does the Halacha say. We'll get it down to earth a little bit. This is from Or Sameach. First of all, they did a little bit of research into Jewish law that directs the practice of prayer. And they say as follows: regarding language of prayer, the Talmud clearly states that one may pray in any language that he understands. However, this ruling seems to apply only to an individual and only on a temporary basis. On a group basis, you pray in Hebrew. Now, you probably would find another viewpoint that says if you're davening by yourself, you can just keep davening by yourself in English if that's all you understand. That's like a side point. Okay. But why, in particular, is it preferable to pray in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew? And he's quoting the Mishnah Berurah, which we'll get into a little bit, a source of Halacha. And again, what does the Mishnah Berurah say? And this is a source of Halacha we're talking about. Some authorities stress that due to the great spiritual power invested in Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew, it is preferable to pray the set daily prayers in Hebrew, even if one does not understand the words. Based on the above, there is a ruling that says one who is able to pray in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew should do so even if he does not understand, and only one who cannot pray in Hebrew at all should pray in another language. So here's another source, and one that's involved not in mystical thinking, but in the nitty-gritty of daily Jewish living and the rules that govern that. They're also saying that there is some kind of great spiritual power invested in the Hebrew, and therefore, even if you don't understand what you're saying, you're performing a spiritual action by saying those Hebrew words. Boy. Okay. And wrap it up. Here we go back to the Anshe Knesset Hagdalah, the men of the Great Assembly. Again, quoting the Mishnah Berurah, the source of Halacha. Therefore, when the great sages, known as the Anshe Knesset Hagdalah, established a set text of prayer in Hebrew, they instilled within it the power to ascend to heaven without even without understanding the words. Okay. Can't tell you what that means when we talk about ascending to heaven. But here is another source that says that even without understanding the words, you are performing a spiritual act because of the spirituality of the sages that designed that prayer. Okay, just a little bit for you about the Mishnah Berurah. The Chafetz Chaim wrote that. He almost was 100 years old. Okay. And by the way, as is the custom, this entire text that we're going through now is going to be posted in the Facebook group tomorrow. So you'll have access to all these links to all these different sources. Okay. All right, so that is a little bit on the question that we generated from last week, which is does it serve anybody any good for me to say Hebrew prayers if I don't understand the Hebrew? And there's a bunch of sources that say no doubt about it, but as Rabbi Kaplan emphasizes, it's really preferable if you get to the point where you do understand what you're saying. And if you want to take it to the next level, according to Reb Chaim, even be able to know the vocabulary so well that you can visualize the words. Okay. A little bit more. Now we're going to talk about the rules of the Amidah as described by Rabbi Kaplan. And you'll see how meditation fits in, and you'll learn a little bit more about the spiritual heritage involved. Okay. First of all, Rabbi Kaplan says, the first rule is that the Amidah must be said at the proper time. By the way, this is from Jewish Meditation. Must be said at the proper time. The morning Shacharit Amidah can be said from dawn until the end of the first quarter of the day, maybe 10 a.m. or so, or in an emergency until noon. The afternoon Mincha Amidah can be said from shortly after noon until sunset. The evening Ma'ariv Amidah can be said from nightfall until just before dawn. Okay. Now, let's learn a little bit about this time. First question, why do we have these three prayer services? Chabad tells us a little bit. Quoting the Talmud, two reasons. First of all, there's a tradition that these three prayers, morning, afternoon, and evening, were instituted by the forefathers, the Avot. Abraham instituting the morning or Shacharit prayer, Isaac praying the afternoon or Mincha service, and Jacob was the first one to say the evening Ma'ariv prayers. Okay. Obviously, it's a question, what were they saying? Because is that really a claim that what Avraham Avinu is saying for Shacharit is the same thing we're saying? Don't know. That's a separate study. Second reason, though, is that the rabbis timed the daily prayers to correspond with the two temple sacrifices, daily sacrifices, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and the burning of the limbs of the afternoon offering, which would go on through the night. Dix explains why in days like Shabbat, okay. So we have a tradition that the Avot instituted the prayers, and we also have a tradition that the rabbis instituted the prayers. Are those two irreconcilable or in a conflicting opinions? According to Chabad, no, because according to Talmud, both are true. Although the patriarchs established praying at the 3 times a day, their conduct wouldn't necessarily obligate us to do so. It was only later that the rabbis formalized the 3 daily prayers as standard practice. Okay, so they're basically saying just because Avraham davened in the morning doesn't mean that we have to daven in the morning, but the rabbis say, okay, we also have morning sacrifices, so that's why we have to do it. It's the rabbis kind of said, let's make it an official practice. Okay, that's a little bit about the times. Next point that Rabbi Kaplan makes is about the hands. He says this: before any worship service, one must wash the hands. This is reminiscent of the Kohen priests who would wash their hands before performing the divine service in the Jerusalem temple. Washing the hands is more than mere cleansing. It is a ritual purification that must be done in a prescribed manner. The washing is accomplished by pouring water from a cup or glass, first over the right hand and then over the left hand, washing the hands in this manner 3 times alternately. Okay, we're familiar with that. Okay, you do the same thing before you eat bread. Okay. Why? So we're supposed to be like the Kohanim. So the reason why we're washing is because they washed. So we're talking about the Kohanim doing the sacrificing. So we're doing the praying instead of the sacrificing. They wash their hands, so we have to wash our hands. Okay, that's a general idea. Okay, let's see if we can have some more particular understanding of what this hand washing is about, above and beyond the fact that the Kohanim did it. Okay. So if you recall, the prayer that we say, or the blessing that we say when we wash our hands is Al Natilat Yadayim. Okay, and that literally means lifting of the hands, upon lifting of the hands. Okay. And as Wikipedia tells us, lifting of the hands is derived either from Psalm 134.2 or from the Greek natla, Hebrew natla, in reference to the jar of water used. The Jewish Encyclopedia states that many historic Jewish writers, and particularly the Pharisees, took this to mean that water had to be poured out onto uplifted hands, and they could not be considered clean until water had reached the wrist. So this claim is that this raising of the hands is really talking, you're doing this so that a cup can be poured on your hands, and that natla is reference to this jar that's used to pour the water on the hands. So then the question is, how does the sharish nun tet lamed mean a jar or lifting up? That's something for us to study. But this is one opinion that says the lifting of the hands have to do with lifting them so through a jar of water, water can be poured on your hands. Okay. And then he brings in Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. And he says, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan in Waters of Life connects the laws of impurity to the narrative in the beginning of Genesis. According to Genesis, Adam and Eve had brought death into the world by eating from the tree of knowledge. Kaplan points out that most of the laws of impurity relate to some form of death, or in the case of Nida, and the loss of potential life. Nida, of course, when a woman is menstruating. One who comes into contact with one of the forms of death must then immerse in water, which is described in Genesis as flowing out of the Garden of Eden in order to cleanse oneself of this contact with the dead. So they're saying that Rabbi Kaplan is talking about water as a cleansing agent of impurity. So what does that have to do with washing before praying? Do we consider ourselves impure and then we have to become more pure to pray? I personally did not quite get that connection, because in this perspective, the impurity has to do with coming in contact with death or the loss of life. And if I'm sitting here at my desk, I'm not coming in contact with anything that's death or the loss of life. So how did I become impure? That I had to become pure through washing in order for me to daven mincha. Okay, but I did find something else that Rabbi Kaplan says about water in his tremendous book, Waters of Eden. Okay, let's take a look at that. This is what he says. Hold on a second. Wrong page. Okay. He's talking about the temple service with the Kohen Hagadol. Kohen Gadol. The most crucial part of this ancient temple service was the entrance of the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, into the Holy of Holies. We talk about this on Yom Kippur in the davening. The special chamber in the temple where the ark containing the original stone tablets given to Moses was kept. This was the only time a year when any human being was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. The Kohen Gadol had to put on special white vestments before entering this most sacred room. After leaving the Holy of Holies, he would once again put on the golden vestments that he wore all year round. So he's changing his clothes. He has to do this 5 times, actually. On this most sacred of days, the Kohen Gadol would enter the Holy of Holies 2 times. This, in turn, would require that he change his vestments 5 times, since he would begin and end in his golden ones. Each time before he changed, he would have to immerse himself in a mikveh. So he is going through 5 clothing changes: gold, white, gold, white, gold. And each time he does this, he has to immerse in water, immerse in a mikveh. So Rabbi Kaplan points out the Kohen Gadol was not impure or unclean in any way. He was rather undergoing a change in status, symbolized most dramatically by the changes of vestments. When he entered the Holy of Holies, he had a very different status than before, a unique status that would allow him to enter this room. This change in status was achieved through immersion in the mikveh. And then he says, the immersion in ritual purification involves the very same concept. The water is not washing away filth. Rather, the mikveh is changing the individual's spiritual status from that of tameh, unclean, to that of tahor, clean. Actually, this purification is a change of status rather than a cleansing process. Okay, and we know that when a woman is coming out of nida, as she goes to the mikveh signs the change in status. Formerly nida, now not nida. This whole impurity stuff takes away from the understanding that there's a change in status here. He goes, the most dramatic example of this change of status is in the case of conversion. Here again, there is no question of uncleanliness or purification, but merely a change of status. Somebody who's converting goes to mikveh, they're becoming a Jew then. That's a big change in status. As in the examples mentioned earlier, this change in status comes about through immersion in the mikveh. Okay, as the Talmud states, as soon as the convert immerses and emerges, he is like a Jew in every way. Okay. Okay, so the point that's being made there is that the water is used to change the status. Okay, so my point is that perhaps the washing of the hands before you pray is a change of status. It's signifying a change of status. You're going from somebody who's doing ordinary stuff to a specifically spiritual stuff, although we all understand that in an ideal way, every minute of every day should be dedicated to something spiritual, and we should be meditating all the time, and everything we do should be dedicated to God in this whole idea, but it takes a long time to get there, and you have to take steps to get there. And one of the steps is to make yourself mindful that you're involved in spiritual stuff. So the washing of the hands is your reminder that you're changing. You should have a mental shift and have a more spiritual framework for what you're about to do, which is pray. And I would take it a step further and maybe speculate that ideally you'd be immersing in the mikveh, because you're not just using your hands when you pray, your whole body's praying. But it's kind of impractical for every Jew to go to mikveh, men and women, before every minyan. It's just not going to happen. So maybe, I'm speculating that's me, hands, the washing is sufficient, because otherwise there'd be no washing at all. If you just required mikveh, nobody would do it, except for a few, but everybody can wash their hands. It's still, most people don't wash their hands before they daven anyway, so no way they would go to mikveh. Okay. This dress part is meaty. All right, so let's finish up with this dress part. Okay, Rabbi Kaplan makes the following about what you wear when you daven. One may not recite the Amidah unless one is properly dressed. In particular, men should cover their heads with a hat or yarmulke. It also should not be said in the presence of other people who are not decently dressed or where an unpleasant odor is present. Preferably, it should not be said in a situation where there is anything that will disturb one's concentration. Okay. So, dress is important. And in yeshiva.com, it says, one should enhance the mitzvah by praying, by wearing respectable clothing for prayer, so that one shows at least as much honor to God as one does to a human being. I encourage you to click on this link when I post it in the Facebook group. It goes a little bit further, but it shows there's a certain suitability for where you are. If you're, there's a lot of Jews that spend a lot of time at the shore. These people, when they daven mincha at the shore, are not rushing home to put on a suit and then going on the beach to daven. So there's a certain suitability for where you are. But the point is being mindful that you take it seriously. And if there was a very important person if you were in the presence of somebody very important, how would you look? I think that's his point. But let's take it a step further. Can we tie in meditation and mindfulness to dress? Is there another component to the way you dress when you daven the Amidah or other prayers that has to do with mindfulness and meditation, in addition to the respect you have to show? Okay. This is from a meditation group based in Thailand. And this is what they say. Indians, meaning from India, tend to decorate the center of the forehead exactly in the seat of the third eye in order to strengthen the awareness of this area. You've seen that. In Judaism, so these meditators from Thailand are saying this, and you'll find out why in a minute. In Judaism, putting the tefillin on the head represents the superiority of the head over the heart in this tradition. One way or another, the opening of the third eye exists in almost every spiritual tradition. So these are people who look for spiritual reasons to do things, and how ornamentation and dress affects your spirituality. They look at tefillin as being a spiritual symbol of the importance of the mind over your feelings. In addition, it facilitates the concentration in meditation and prayer and in the study of scriptures. They also say that when people are wearing tefillin, it's enhancing their concentration when they daven. I also will tell you that I tried to find a source that said, does tefillin also serve as acupressure so that it somehow is activating the energy channel or the chakra that's here, just as the one when you tie the tefillin back here, it might be doing it. And just as when you put on tefillin here, it might be activating it. I couldn't find something, but I bet you it exists. And they said, whereas for a person with an open heart chakra, the world, when you succeed in activating this energy channel, your third eye opens. And so what does the world look like? When you open this, the world looks like a symphony of love. A person who is awake at the level of the third eye, you see causal levels, the capacity of vision soars like an eagle. You've got all this mystical vision when this opens by virtue of opening this. And lo and behold, what do these Thailand meditators say? The book of Yetzirah, which is attributed to Abraham, describes the steps of the formation of the world representing such a perspective. So they are saying that the book of Yetzirah, our mysticism, which Abraham allegedly wrote, he wrote when he had an open third eye, however he opened it. Okay, so that's, I'm making this point to show that when we even wear tefillin and we daven the Amidah or another prayer, it very well could be that it enhances our spiritual experience of the davening. Okay, and now you're asking, what are these meditators from Thailand, why are they talking about Yetzirah and tefillin and everything? Because one of their founders is Uriel Yariv, and I bet you he's an Israeli. And one of the many Jews that ended up looking for a spiritual quest in the Far East that Rabbi Kaplan talks about, and everybody knows one of these guys who has gone that way to find spirituality, but he obviously has some background in Jewish ritual practice, prayer, and mysticism, because that's what he's talking about. Okay. Interesting stuff. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. If I could figure out how to do that, so bear with me a second. Stop the screen share.